Hello, everybody. My name is Jeffrey Zielinski. I am co-founder of the Serviceberry Group and host of our Branch Network podcast. Joining me again is my friend Renee Courtwright. Renee, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So today's conversation is one that I must admit I have very little experience in, but in talking to you, we felt it was going to be an important topic for families, loved ones, and that's the transitionary phase of the journey. So given my vulnerability and not actually being at this stage of the journey, I'm going to just ask the questions that we formulated that you think might be top of mind if you think that works, and we'll have a
Absolutely.
conversation about it.
And never fear, you're going to get there.
Yeah. Well,
Everybody's
you're
going to hit all
preempting
these
me.
stages, Can't
That's
wait. We've
right.
got a lot to look forward to.
That's right. That's right. You're kind of coaching me now, so things to ask whenever those stages begin.
We don't want anybody to be shocked. That's the
Yeah.
whole idea, is just to kind of get the information out there. So, because a lot of the times, like when we were going through this with my oldest,
Hmm.
it was very shocking. The whole transition process to us was shocking because we had obviously never been through it. And there really wasn't anyone to guide us down that path. So we
Right.
had to sort of like go creep slowly and figure it out as we were going.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes a ton of sense. So I guess it begs the question out of the gate: when does transition planning start? When should people start thinking about this?
Okay, so I'm going to back up a little bit to move forward, right? So there's different kinds of transition. And the first transition, which is very basic, and I think that people often don't think about, is that transition from elementary to middle school, because middle school starts to look a little bit different. That's where you may have had a student in elementary who was pulled out, like resource room, had a little bit of support, but now they have to transition to middle school. Middle
Mhm.
school is going to look different. Can that student handle moving from class to class, right? There's a lot of things that go into that. So this is something that you start to think about like fifth grade, because
Mhm.
a student who had maybe less supports elementary might need a little bit more for that stage, because now this is like, wow, oh my God, I'm going to move from class to class. Is this a student who's capable of, passing time in the hallway and things like that? Things that we don't always think about when they're in elementary. So that's like the first transition. That's like a
Mhm.
small transition. So we want to get through that one. And there are things that you could put in your child's IEP to help them with transitions, right? So maybe we have the child who just needs a little bit of help. So for that one, we might say, well, they leave class a minute to 2 minutes before the bell or before the end of that period. So this way they kind of get a head start in the hallway.
Sure.
Or, at dismissal or whenever those times are when students are going to their locker or something like that. And you could put that right into your child's IEP to make sure that that safeguard is there to help them. And then as time goes on, middle school is typically sixth, seventh, and eighth. Of course, it depends on, your district and how it's set up. But as those years are going on, if you see you can like loosen that a little bit, that's awesome. Or if you have to tighten it up a little bit, then you do that, but you make those adjustments there. So I really think that's the first transition period.
Hmm.
After that, then we look at the more typical transition years, which is high school. And when we're talking about things like work-based learning and community-based instruction, transition truly begins at 14 years old.
Okay.
So 14 years old could be freshman year. Again, it depends on where the kids are and things like that. It might be the
Sure.
end of freshman year approaching sophomore year. It could be that summer in between, just, wherever those
Right.
birthdays fall. And if we
Right.
held a student, all those things come into place. But I am going to be looking down because I have my notes,
It's
because I
all
don't
good.
forget anything. I don't want to mislead anybody. I want to make sure that I'm all good here. But so 14 is the official start in the eyes of DVRS. So, DVRS is one of our state agencies, the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services. It's a mouthful.
Yeah, yeah. So if I could, because it's on our notes here, if you could, provide just a broad explanation of pre-ETS and DVRS, those programs, maybe how
Absolutely.
we think about that.
So, when I say, transition, start thinking about it at 14 years old and DVRS is going to give the support for vocational skills, right? They're going to start um, helping your child to figure out what they like, what they don't like, strengths, weaknesses, because you could like something, but that might not be a strength.
Sure.
You could dislike something, but those skills may
Mm.
be a strength. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Yeah.
those two things don't always line up. And, sometimes we forget that. We think, oh, well, if they're really good at this, that must be because they like it. Not
Yeah.
always. And the way that they do that is they have like a whole, I'm going to say it like curriculum of, things, and they go through it and they're going to do like a checklist. So first, before that even begins, you have to apply for DVRS. Okay. Typically schools will have some sort of like an orientation about it or
Mhm.
something like that. If not, you just go online and you put in DVRS New Jersey or DVRS
Yeah.
whatever your state may
Yeah.
be, and then you're going to get prompted and go to wherever that start page is. At that point, you're going to apply for services. As long as the person, student, child, is deemed disabled, they will be eligible, but you still have to go through the application
Sure.
process. It's really easy. Of all the different things that we're going to apply for, this is probably the
I was gonna say
easiest one.
that's a welcome, that's a welcome characteristic, because most of these things are not particularly easy.
Oh, no. Most things are going back to like, birth and,
Right.
no, this one is the easiest one, I promise.
Alright.
And anybody could, try to come at me on that one. I am going to tell you, I swear this will be the
Well, the
easiest one.
application is what's easy.
The application
Okay.
is super easy, basic, and you're going to go through it. And then after the application is submitted, they will do an intake and an eligibility determination. Big words, but for this, it's simple. It's
Mhm.
quick, it's easy, it's painless. After you've been deemed eligible is when the pre-ETS section would begin. So, pre-ETS is this is where it gets a little gray, right? Because nothing could be
Of
100%
course.
black and white. You
Right.
can be eligible for pre-ETS and not in DVRS, but really for the process to flow, you go through DVRS and then they start the pre-ETS process. So pre-ETS is where it comes in, it focuses on your pre-employment transition services.
Okay.
That's where we start at 14 years old.
Interesting.
Those kinds of things at 14. So we're not sending 14-year-olds out to work, Jeff. We're not that crazy, right? But at 14, at the beginning of this process, they start with what they call the job exploration counseling. So that's when you have somebody, the way I did it for mine was I had someone come into the school and do it during school time. And the reason is because after school, you can certainly set these things up and they'll do it, at your
Mhm.
home or at a library or whatever. But and I think this is the case for a lot of kids, they're fried after school.
Right.
Mine are like, that's it. There's nothing left.
Yeah. It's a full day.
So, not that I didn't want to do this with them, but it was more beneficial for my son and daughter to do it during the school day. And I knew that they had their case manager, their teacher, you know what I mean? Like people
Yeah.
that were
Yeah.
there that I trust. and, to help them with the process, just help them with communication and things like that. Because the
Definitely.
first phase is this job exploration counseling, and they're asking different questions, right? And they're trying to get to know the kid a little bit.
Hmm.
And I know my kids sometimes are challenged with different communication or, oh, I can't think of the right word. So when you have those safe people that know them, they're there to kind of help them along.
100%.
For me, I was like, this is so okay for them to do during the day. I rather have that focus when they're really on and we're getting the best information out of
Yeah.
them. Because then
Yeah. I think that makes
could
total
talk to
sense.
I could talk to the person later and tell them all my little, motherly ins and outs of my child.
Yeah.
But and sometimes people don't realize I actually had a mom that I was talking to not too long ago, and she was nobody told her that this could be done during school time.
Mm.
And she was like, my child is so done at the end of the day. She's like, I can't, do these things. And I was like, I get it. You don't have to. And she was so relieved.
Yeah.
So you have
It
to,
goes back to that you don't know what you don't know.
you don't. And sometimes we're afraid to ask
Yep.
because, we
Definitely.
don't want to overstep or we don't want someone to say no.
Sure.
But ask,
Yeah.
especially in a case like this where I could tell you from experience, I know that that could happen. But if you've got the kind of kid who's going, 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 going and can do it after school, go for it. By all means, then
Yeah.
take care of it then. You just want to make sure that you get that done. So the person, like right now, my daughter is of high school age. So my pre-ETS person, I have set up on a schedule so that she comes into school twice a month to meet with my daughter. So depending upon the school, their schedule, you work with the case manager and you ask them to kind of create that schedule. They know where there's flexibility and what they could pull them out of and things like that. So I would never say to somebody, "Oh, pull your child from, academic time." The school will work it out. There's always time that they could carve out. Maybe it's 30 minutes. We're not talking like about having kids like miss a big amount of time. So first is the job exploration counseling. They're getting to know the student. They're finding out the little things, like I said, like the strengths, the weaknesses, the likes, the dislikes. And sometimes they're doing that based on the child through conversation. It might be through a game. It just depends. They're trained, they know.
Yeah.
Okay. The next phase that they go through is work-based learning. So often you'll hear that called a WBL, right? Work-based learning experiences or CBIs, community-based instruction. That's when we have students and they're usually with their class, so they're not doing this alone and they're going out into the community. When it's a community-based instruction opportunity, that's something that's more like a community skill. They're learning how
Mhm.
to use the post office. I know not a lot of people do, but we still need to know how to do it.
Right.
Use the bank. Not a lot of people do, but we still need to do it. Those community things.
Sure.
Maybe it's the municipal building in your town. You know what I mean? Like, and they'll set those things up. Could be the police station, could be the
Sure.
firehouse, all of these different things that how do we act when we're there? How do we know that this is, a safe place? Or just showing them these are all the different things we can do in this location, depending upon what that is. It might even be something in your community, like a store. How do we navigate a store?
Definitely.
How do we navigate signage when we're out? Right? Like, because those things look different than the signs that these kids are used to in school.
Yeah.
So now we have to learn those, community things. Work based learning is when now we're going out to places that could be potential workplaces. We're learning what the employees do there. Why do they do it? How do they do it? And you kind of can tell when you're with a group of kids, like who's lighting up at this one, who's glazed over and they're so not interested,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
people are watching and they're taking notes and they're like, okay, this kid loves it, this kid hates it. But you have to do the things that they like and don't like to figure out where they are.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I have a friend whose son is in a, this sort of phase. And I think even when I was talking to him, even within each potential job they may have, there's sort of jobs within the job, right? And they're kind of looking at what skills and techniques they may be able to employ within that, store or whatever it is that they're, working on.
Exactly. And so then another part of it is shadowing, right? So we might set it up so that a child is, repeat on on a routine basis going to the same place. They're shadowing somebody. They're seeing what they do, and then you see, okay, can we get started? So all of this starts at 14. It's not click 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 click, this is going to happen in one school year. This happens between 14 and 21 years old.
Hmm.
So we've got a long time to take our time and really kind of study each child and see what's best for them, because we know that there's no two kids alike and there's nothing that's going to be the same for all
100%.
of them. Then another, kind of pillar of what they go through is counseling and opportunities. So you're probably saying to yourself, oh, yeah, like, a child in this audience, they're really going to go through counseling and opportunities. How are they going to understand that? No, it's this is just like what they're calling this section, this chapter, so to speak,
Sure. Yeah.
but it is being done at the level of the child, because that was my concern. I was like, well, these topics sound very mature and very advanced. And my two children are at very different levels,
Hmm.
but it is then modified so that they can have the right conversations with the children. Some kids we could speak to, have an awesome conversation. Other kids, we might be learning more of this through pictures.
Definitely.
And they do. They will make these people are trained, they know what to do. So I don't want to make a parent feel like, oh, this isn't for my student because maybe we have, too many cognitive issues going on or we're not at that level. It's for every level. They'll figure out how to like extract this career information, so to speak, out of that child.
Yeah.
Right? Because do you think that? Are you like, thinking ahead right now and going, how is my kid going to be able to do this?
I mean, to a certain extent, yeah. There's certainly times where you think, like, gosh, are they going to be able to do certain things, or what is their job outlook going to look like? Yeah, I think it probably has crossed my mind.
Right. And that unknown is very, very frightening.
Sure.
Right. But this is the time. This is where they're going to explore. This is the phase of life where we want them to try things. Right. So if you're in a district, right, that's doing this right with these kids starting at 14,
Hmm.
they're going to walk you through all of these stages. It'll be wonderful. If you're in a district that I don't want to say isn't doing it right, but maybe isn't jumping in with both feet,
Right.
ask about it. So the whole thing here is I want people to know what they don't know, what to ask for. Ask about work-based learning, ask about DVRS, ask about CBI, right? I mean, we could put, I don't know if you could put it in a link, in a comment or whatever, what all the little acronyms stand
Yeah.
for, so that, we almost create like a glossary of,
Sure can. We
special
sure
ed terms
can.
and things like that.
Yeah, we don't want to get drowned out by the acronyms, right?
Because after a while, all the letters start to sound the same
Bingo.
anyway, right?
Definitely.
But that could be, a resource that, parents could come back to, like your website, and they could find that on the service berry group.
Definitely.
But ask. If you don't have it, ask. Start asking at 14. Because if you start asking at 18, 19, 20, 21, it's not that it's too late, but it's hard to do these things on
Yeah.
fast
You've
forward.
you've lost valuable time. So to that point about asking questions, you remember, you know the whole story about why Patty and I even started doing this. This whole project, this whole platform was largely driven by the IEP process, and figuring out in some cases months to years later that certain services were accessible. We just never asked the questions to, get
Yeah.
those services. So you had mentioned IEPs in the beginning. It's obviously very important to us and the platform. Could you talk just a little bit? I think you probably already did. Just like what should parents look for, whether that's language, whether that's the questions. If we can kind of double down on the IEP part of this, I think that would be really valuable.
Absolutely. And I am not an IEP expert by any
Sure.
means.
Yep.
You know what I mean? This is just from doing it with 2 kids. So
Bingo.
you kind of get a little
Same.
bit better at it. Um, but the things that you're going to look for, are you're going to look for those words, right? If you have a student who's 14 and older, look for those words. Look for work-based learning. Look for DVRS. Look for community-based instruction. You're gonna find, and depending upon, what kind of IEP system that the school district
Hmm.
uses, it might turn up on different pages or different
Sure.
sections. So I don't wanna say it's always gonna be in a certain place because I wouldn't know that for sure. But as you're flipping through your IEP, these are things to look for. When you're looking at, your child's goals, it might be under life skills because these are goals that are going to be there. The state of New Jersey has, and I think every state probably does, but the state of New Jersey I know does have a work-based learning handbook. There's a PDF. You could just do it as like a Google search or whatever, it'll pop up. And they actually have this awesome chart that tells you what happens at what age, and it
Oh,
like
that's
checks
great.
the
That's
boxes.
great.
I didn't know that. I found that after my oldest. So now I have it for my second one, and I
We'll,
was
we'll
like,
link we'll link that in the podcast.
right, I was like, "This chart is gold." I sent it to all my friends now, that are, special ed parents. I'm like, "Here's the chart. Here's the chart." Because it just helps when you have a roadmap,
1,000%.
right? So this is like our goal. We want to help give the roadmap. So look for those things in the IEP. Like those are the key words to kind of look for. If your case manager might bring those things up to you. If they haven't, it is so okay to bring it up to them. I mean, just like very simple conversation and email. Hey, I heard about these things. Do we have these opportunities? How could we incorporate this and get it started for my child? Start as early as you can.
Yeah, I can't encourage parents enough to just ask the questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question at any stage in this journey, but
No.
especially what we're talking about now. Because again, I've found out over time that when you don't ask, that can hurt you as well.
That's it, because unfortunately, sometimes then they feel like, okay, they didn't ask about it, we're not getting into it.
Sure.
But then there's others that that's not the case at all. So I
Yep.
don't want, to kind of say,
Exactly.
oh,
It's not a blanket
that's the way
statement.
that's right.
Yeah.
Definitely not at
It's
all.
a
Um,
technique.
and this was a key statement, right? I
Go
wrote
ahead.
this down and I want to make sure that, because this is very important, it's fair to say. Pre-ETS does not replicate or replace services provided by the school. They supplement and complement the transition services provided by the school. So this is not a replacement. This is something that's an extra support. It's something that complements it. It's something that works with it. So it's something that you want to get, and you want this pre-ETS person, this DVRS person to become part of your team. I request that my representative actually attends my IEP meetings
Sure.
because their input has become valuable. Now they've
It's a
worked
great
with my
idea.
child for a while, but
It's a great
nobody
idea.
offered that to me. You can invite anyone that you need to your IEP meeting. If this person becomes part of your child's team, that's what it is. That's their team meeting, and
Yep.
you're the captain of the team.
Bingo. Bingo. I can't emphasize that enough. We've had our folks from ABA attend. We've had, various therapists attend. I think that's a great idea to share.
It's wonderful, and even if that person doesn't contribute a whole lot, because IEP meetings could get really lengthy. Mine sometimes are like marathons. I feel like I'm like, "Okay, I need to bring snacks. There's so many people here,"
Right.
and, like,
Juice box.
yeah, right. I need a box of coffee to keep them
Right.
awake. It's like
Right.
the whole thing. But bring them. You know what I mean? Like, all the, because even if they're just there and they're listening, they're getting information from all these other specialists that work with your child that they could get one little valuable thing that could take them on a whole nother, path with your child. So there's never, don't feel like, oh, well, that, this person did attend my meeting and didn't say much. There's value, even if they didn't say much.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So bring
Totally
them
agree.
in, have a
Totally
girl.
agree. This may be I don't want to call it a loaded question because I think the outcomes are probably going to be different for everybody. But in your experience, like how would you define a successful transition? What does that look like to you?
So, okay. I am extremely proud to say that I have an example with my oldest of
I
a
love it.
success.
Let's hear it. Bring it on.
Now, he went through he is now 22 years old, almost 23. Okay. So we've been through the process. He had these experiences. He was in his transition program. Now, a typical transition program is the time that's after your high school years. So usually it's your 18 to 21-year-old program. And different districts have different little, like, names for them and things like that. They have more acronyms. um,
Perfect.
why not? Just add to the list. But that's ultimately what it is. So during his transition program, then that was his time where he got to go out to work and try these jobs, right?
Mhm.
And we got to see where it was. He went out with a job coach provided by the school. And that job coach helped give those supports, right? Where
Great.
do we need to help the student? Where can we now start to pull back? So now we were approaching his last year, his 21. And what are we going to do? Well, the company that he was working with offered him a job.
That's awesome.
This is a real
That's
life
awesome.
success story. He started with them in the fall of 2024. So he works 5 days a week, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day. No longer has the support of a job coach.
Wow. Wow.
Uh, It's a fabulous company. They actually have a program where they employ adults with disabilities. I think they call it the program for all abilities within their corporation. So this is something that they welcome. And it's a model that they try to share with other companies so that they can use them as a role model to also do this. He is so proud.
Oh,
Jeff,
yeah.
this kid goes to work every day. He is happy to go. Now, my husband and I are in the school systems, right? So we're getting off still school holidays. He's now in the business world.
Mhm.
He is happy to go to work when we're home because it's a school holiday, right? Like he loves going.
Right.
He's proud of himself. He wants to be there. He has such a sense of accomplishment. When I pick him up at the, end of his work day, how was your day, buddy? Oh, it was great. I'm exhausted. I worked so hard. I was so busy. And I'm like, that's fantastic. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, loves it. But he's proud. And this gave us the opportunity to get paid for a job, right? I don't have him get direct deposit. I have him get a physical check so that he sees the check. So he has to
I like
endorse
that.
the check. So now we have a bank experience.
I was just gonna say that. So now you're going back to those experiences that you were talking about earlier. I love that.
Tie it all together. This
That's
is it.
it.
Wrap it up with a nice
I
bow.
love that. That's a great idea.
So this is a success story. He's
Amen.
my success story that
Amen.
I tell everyone about. It's just phenomenal. And there are stories like this in all different schools, all different levels of kids, because they had this path, right? That they got to experience slowly. We weren't on a fast track,
Yeah.
and take the time, learn it. I find that these kids seem to get into things that are routine. You know what I mean? Like he's in a fulfillment
Definitely.
center. So it's, we're doing this. We're doing step one, step two, step three, boom. The next we repeat step one, step two, and it's perfect. But there's
If I
something
could
else for
point out
everybody.
and it wonderful, wonderful. But you have a little extra glimmer in your eye when talking about it as a parent, right? There's such
Uh,
a
because
indescribable feeling.
when I was at your point, right, and he was a little guy, I was so unsure of what this future was gonna look
Yep.
like.
Yep.
I was so scared. My husband, and now we say, "God, if we had had a crystal ball, that would have saved me years of torturing myself." You know what I
We had
mean?
a Branch Network podcast with Renee Courtwright telling
If
us about this.
only it would have just been my beacon of light.
But
But
I
this
mean it. You lit up. You lit up just even getting ready to talk about it.
because I truly am so proud of him, Jeff. Like, it just every child needs a reason to get up
Mhm.
every day.
Yep.
I don't care what that reason is, and it's our job as their parents and their educators and their service providers to help unwrap whatever that little gift is that they have so that they could find the right job.
You kinda just answered it, but I'm gonna throw it out there because maybe it's just like a reiteration of what you just said, but, what would you say in layman's terms to parents that are scared of this stage, right? Because it's easy to hear these things, and again, there's always that at least I could tell you from my own personal, there's always that sort of whisper in your ear, like the what ifs. You obviously have a success story. What would you just tell the parents, in 30 seconds that are still, trying to digest all of this?
Don't give up.
Mm,
Don't give up for a minute. There are days where it's hard. There were days with him that it was hard. There's days with my daughter that it's hard. And I don't know what her future is going to be. She's at a point where it's very uncertain. I don't know which direction, we're going in, but there is something out there for every one of them. And some of them it takes
yeah.
longer. And that's okay. But don't stop, even on the hard days.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. It's in line with almost every step of this journey. Right? When I was just giving that, I just did that podcast with Lexi, and one of the things that I said is, I know it's easier said than done, and trust me, I know that well. But push on, fight. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. I can assure you that, and it comes in ebbs and flows. But when again, I go back to just your face was beaming just talking about it. It's so rewarding. It's indescribable how good a feeling it is to meet these milestones, to have
Yeah.
success stories like this, and I just want
Because
so many
then
more people to feel that.
Well, you feel like we're going to be okay. And
Bingo,
you have
bingo.
those we're going to be okay moments all along this journey, right? Like, and they're little ones, but this is a big one because it's
Yeah,
about them taking that step into the adult world. And then once you feel that little bit of relief, now you could start to look at the other things that to be continued on another podcast where we have to talk about guardianship
yeah.
and special needs trusts and DDD and SSI. Look, I'm throwing out all these letters. Oh my God,
More
our heads
letters,
are
more letters.
spinning. Right? But we're all going to learn all these letters together and it's going to be
Yeah.
okay because we're going to do it one little thing at a time. There's nothing else that you could start at 14. So at 14, start this.
As you know, I'm really into the public policy side of things. We'll save it maybe for that future conversation. But there's actually a congressional proposal right now. It's only been proposed. It hasn't passed anywhere. I think it's probably just sitting with a committee. But part of that proposal is to have IEPs actually extend into the college years. So you may see some degree of evolution in what this transitionary process looks like, and hopefully we'll be on the forefront of talking about it. But you had mentioned it, looking at my future and some of the things that we're going to have to go through. And this is certainly one of them. Who knows what changes are going to come down the pike. It's something,
Yeah.
maybe I'll link to that proposal. On its surface, I certainly seem to support it. I want to look a little bit more deeply into it, but just to be able to have a smoother transition from IEP to, excuse me, high school to college with an IEP
Yes.
seems to make sense to me.
Yes, because that's very important too. Because we do have the kids who say maybe a special needs child with an IEP, but they could be on the college track.
100%.
You know what I mean? So we have there's such a wide range, and we kind of have to, speak to all of that, and all levels are on this journey, right?
Yeah,
And some of them are going to go through it, like I said, like quicker, and some of them it might take a little bit more time. No matter what the pace, who cares? The goal is to get them to that point
yeah,
where they're working, they're having this reason beyond their school years to get up every day. It's the kids that we see that are stuck, home, that slipped through the cracks, that absolutely break my heart. And that's where I want to fill in all those cracks so that nobody else falls through.
yeah.
I want to give as much information out there just to help parents so that their child isn't the one that missed something.
Yep. I think you had mentioned it when we were talking about it, and then I promised to get to my last question. I think you used the word exposure, like exposure to different jobs, different experiences.
Yep.
We mentioned it just before, different jobs within the jobs. Getting them familiar with as many things as possible because you're so right. There's an enormous number of directions you can go. And having that exposure, I think, is a good thing.
It's so important. It's so very important because if they don't get out there physically and see what's out there, it's hard for them to understand, right? Like what's
Bingo.
beyond.
Yep.
And we could do a lot with a video, and pictures, but standing in the facility, standing in the coffee shop, standing in, the bank.
Tangible.
That's it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Nothing can replace that.
Bingo.
Experience, experience, experience. Do it all. Do it multiple times. You know what I mean? Sometimes what I even like to do is if I know that there's something on the calendar that the kids are going to do in school, I'll try to do it first with them to give them like the preview so that it's not, oh my God, a deer in headlights. Where am I? What am I doing? Because now we go back to prepping our kids, like we've talked about on all different, levels and topics. Same thing.
Yeah.
And then if they liked it, right? And the feedback is, wow, we really saw that your son or daughter enjoyed this, showed a little bit of interest. Okay, great. I'm going to take them back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just, it's
It's
like,
like everything we do. It's rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, change, change, evolve, evolve, rinse and repeat,
yep,
rinse and repeat.
this is it. There's no crazy formula. It's just
You
that
said it. You
simple.
said it in the travel podcast that we did. More often than not, we just get back to basics.
That's it. That's it. That's how we do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Break it down. And this is what we do. Even if you're doing it at home with them, if you find that there was a place, right, that your child went to and they seem to, have a little glimmer in their eye,
Mhm.
okay, let's see what we could do at home in
Right.
play or
Yep.
maybe it's something in the kitchen, maybe we're going to learn how to make a pitcher of iced tea because we want to measure things because they're curious about food service or something like
Mhm.
that. All right, how many scoops of this do we need? You just find a way, you blend it all in, you water the plant, and eventually it's going to
Yep.
grow.
Yep. Yep. I couldn't agree more. My last question for you, and then you could tell me if we missed anything. This is probably part one of a much broader conversation, but I think you touched on in some of it already. But I'd love to hear from you directly. What is this stage? And if you've been through a lot of stages, you have two older kids. Um, what has this stage taught you?
Patience. Because I think by nature we want things to move quicker.
Oh yeah,
And
I know that's true for me.
yeah, and a lot of these things are beyond our control because now we are starting to work with other agencies or a company. Be patient. I stink at that. I'm still trying to perfect it.
We're
I'm
New
not a
Jersey
patient
people too.
person.
On top of
This
it,
is it, right?
let's
I want it
go.
now. I want it
Right.
yesterday. And and it's okay when things take time. And I have to like take my own advice and practice what I preach
Yeah.
because It's like that piece where like your head is telling you, this is what you should know and
Oh
this is
yeah.
what you should be doing. But
Yeah.
then that other part of your head is going, yeah, but I don't care. I want this, and this.
100%. Yeah.
And
Yep.
it's even like patience with them. Like when my son was like starting out, like I was like, oh, tell me this, tell me that. And I had like all these questions. And, maybe that's what speed dating feels like. Nope, slow it down, pull it
Mhm.
back because that's overwhelming on the receiving end. So now I've got like almost like my routine questions every day when he gets home from work. Like these are the things that I
Yeah.
ask. You know what I mean? And we go through it. It's kind of like when he was little and we were on the way to school in the morning. These are the things I would remind him of in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember to look somebody in the eye, remember to say good morning. Now I'm like, did you check your work email? Was there anything interesting? Y- Who'd you eat lunch with? That was the same as a school question, too. Were you busy today? Were you slow today?
Yeah.
Because if we don't ask the right questions, we don't get the right answers.
Yeah.
And he could have information that's stored in his head of something that happened today. But if I didn't figure out how to pull it out, I got nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's incredibly important.
So probe, go slow, don't overwhelm them, patience.
Love it. Love it. Renee, thank you so much. I think this again is probably part one of a few different conversations we'll have on this type of a topic. But again, if you haven't already, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share. We want to be sure to get the message out and help as many people and families, parents, loved ones, as many people as we possibly can with our reach. We hope you enjoyed the content and be sure to look out for more from the Branch Network podcast and the Serviceberry Group. Renee, thank you so much. And to everybody else, we'll talk to you real soon.
Take care. Thanks, Jeff.
Adios.